Hey, good morning, Patriots. I'm on the road. Well, I'm not really on the road. I'm getting ready to go to my government job, being the county commissioner, and I got to go commission stuff. So I'll be doing that today. So, but someone who will be actually representing the Klingon Empire is Chris Cordani. Good morning, Chris. How are
Good
things
morning.
in the Klingon Empire today?
The Klingon Empire, well, we're fighting a lot around Uranus, so we're working on that pretty hard.
Well, there's a guy out there trying to get into Uranus called David Hogg.
Whoa, hey-o. Only here for a few minutes, and you already got it. So there we go. You still have it.
I just gotta. I look a couple things. I was just driving in. I was listening to NPR. I roll. And Chris, did you know that when you take a student loan, you have to repay it? They're shocked. They're shocked. They were interviewing people. It's like, I had no idea I was going to have to do a payment after I went to school. It's like, what world do you live in?
It's funny here, and I'll get this David Hogg story in a few moments.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I'm watching these videos of these liberals who are whining about paying their student loans, and some of them actually do have good jobs. Some of them have degrees. A lot of them are out with these stupid gender studies degrees. They're not getting anywhere on. They should ask for a refund. That's a whole different bird. Now, maybe what I'll do is when Trixie comes in, if she's coming in and join us. Oh, she's not able to. So I guess I'll be talking about that for a little while till Sargis comes on. So there we go.
Well, you and Sargis, tell Sargis I said, hey, anyway, but obviously I got to go. I mean, I got governance to do. Governance. Anyway, back to the topic. So these folks are whining. Now, I expect big whining from David Hogg, and I'll cover that in a second.
Okay.
But I want to finish one other thing I heard on NPR. But we should do a segment. I heard it on NPR. It's going to be a great segment. The other thing I heard this morning is, did you all know that recruitment is up? Well, it is. Pete Hegseth announced in December, right after they rolled in, numbers rolled up.
Right.
And numbers rolled up again, record numbers in January. And Chris, get this.
Right.
Well, we can't figure out if there's a link between recruitment increases and the Trump victory.
What do you mean? Like, it's right there. It happened It happened right after Trump was elected. And that's an obvious correlation.
Oh, they just don't know, Chris. They just don't know. Well, and he's excluding gays and lesbians, and there's no evidence. Nobody knows if DEI removal was a factor. It's like, well, yeah, apparently it was for them to join when they removed it. They're wondering why they're going to be defunded. Are you kidding me? So speaking of defunding, so let's roll into another liberal who has a fractional brain. That's a good name for a music group, right? Fractional brain.
Fractional brain hemorrhage, if you will.
Brain hemorrhage.
I don't know what the Democrats were thinking when it came to bringing in David Hogg.
So the Credentials Committee, you know how the Democrats are. They don't want to admit they made a mistake. So it's the Credentials Committee, Chris. Overnight, in the dark of night, I guess they're like out doing meth or something. Who knows? I don't know what they do.
Right.
I mean, when they had a lucid moment between hits on the bong pipe, they decided, the Rules Committee decided, hey, we didn't follow the rules, so we're going to remove him. So he's not technically gone because they had to have a full vote. I guess they all got to be off the crystal meth for a day or two. Yes.
Well, maybe they didn't have enough cocaine because Macron must have stolen it when he snuck it in his jacket the other day, right?
Oh, this is like Nat TV stuff. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. We're living in a parody world at this point. That's what we're doing. We're living in a parody world.
Yeah. So they're upset because he wants to get rid of Democrats. Well, we all feel that way, but I don't think you could be hint to David. I don't think you can be a Democrat to get rid of Democrats. I don't think the rules work that way.
Oops. Well, here's another funny thing. The left is always telling us, "Oh, you people have buyer's remorse. You have buyer's remorse because Donald Trump's doing all these things." Well, look who has buyer's remorse right now. The DNC.
Yeah.
They thought, well, David Hogg seems like a cool guy compared to all the wimps that are They're not part of the party.
He's the most masculine of the betas. That's a bad place to be. Oh my God.
He wound up on with what's his name? Bill Maher the other day.
Oh, let's listen to this. This has to be good.
Here is the hoghead talking to Bill Maher.
Wow. It's like deja vu. Look, we're very proud of you. We feel you grew up on this show.
Very proud. Very proud.
Grew up.
Show.
This is my third time.
Oh, I thought it was like 8. Okay. Well,
Third time means
No,
something,
I'm
right?
not that old yet.
you're done very well. No, you're only 25, and you're the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee.
The Duma Party.
Very impressive.
The Duma Party.
What does that job entail?
So that job really helps to play a role in managing a lot of what the DNC focuses on, which is things like the presidential primary. It's helping to be the campaign and waiting for the president. It's helping to manage the debate schedule and helping to support our state parties and local parties around the country. It's a volunteer role, I should add as well. So it's entirely volunteer capacity.
So nothing.
Good summary.
He deserves a heyo for that one. But
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. By the way, welcome, George. Thanks for popping in on us today. And
Hey, George.
You stopped me at the door. I was going.
George, well, I'm glad you can jump in because I got to go do commissioning stuff. Like something like that. I
nice.
got to go commissioner. So, you know.
Yeah.
and commissioner, but I
Governance.
hardly know her.
They have
No,
one
hey.
here in Endo County this morning, but I wanted to go take care of something else. So
So, hey, so George, now that you're here, do you believe NPR can't figure out that the jump in recruiting in the military that went way up, went up in December, went up in January? They can't figure out. It's like, yeah, we don't know if it's related to Trump. It's like,
let me tell you, it should be NPR Stevie Wonders. They're unbelievable. They are amazing. I can't believe the statements they come out with. They just they're demoron crats now. You know, demoron crats. They make no sense at all anymore. You know,
No.
so
They absolutely don't. But it's did you see the convention when they actually elected David Hogg? They had to have somebody. They had to balance the genders. So he's, I guess, one guy, one broad, one other, that sort of thing. That's not how to run a party. I'm sorry. This is why they're failing. And believe me, I encourage them to keep doing it. But this is why they're failing.
yeah.
But
Well, let
the
me
whole
point
thing
out
is
something.
yeah.
So one of the things, Elon, the guy that was released from Hamas yesterday, I've pointed this out on several interviews. How many Democrats went to Israel to demand Hamas release him? How many? Zero. None. None.
Zippo.
Instead, they were down in El Salvador, staying in cheap hotels, probably, visiting with ladies of the night or men of the night for certain women, just saying, and hanging out, trying to demand an MS-13 human trafficker be returned.
Oh, well, look, here's what they're doing, gentlemen. And this is their MO. Remember, they left that journalist or that father, right? They left that father who was in Russia that Trump got out of there to rot in jail while Biden and his administration worked very hard to get some useless bench playing WNBA broad who was deliberately disobeying Russian law to get out of but she was deliberately disobeying the law in Russia. And boy, Biden worked quickly to get her out because it was the WNBA, and let's just say she was the right tone of melanin. But the father that Trump finally got out of there, he had to rot in jail.
Yeah.
They don't care. No, they don't care. It's all about optics for them. It's never about foresight.
Yeah. So, well, speaking of optics, I got to go. George, you and Chris have a good time and have fun with our guest later. Who's coming on again, Chris?
Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari. We're going to be talking Middle East. Yeah, we're going to talk about the India-Pakistan ceasefire. We're going to talk about the Houthi. We're going to talk about Iran. So we'd love to have you paired up with him another time. But we're going to be doing
I think we'd all agree that Democrats should send David Hogg to work with the Houthi. That's a good investment of his time.
Especially his hairdo. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm one to talk, but maybe his forehead could block the could reflect the sun and maybe keep bombs.
No, Chris. His forehead is like a weapon. You could shoot a laser off of it against multiple targets.
And again, I'm one to talk here. I look like Frazier.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go. See y'all later.
All right, take care.
Thanks, bud,
Take care,
Tony.
brother. All right.
George, thanks for being on with us today. I really
no-
appreciate it. And
Yeah, no
this
problem.
is very
Anytime.
last minute. I
No,
tried
it's
to-
okay. I was going out. I was just going out the door, and I got hit with your message, so I just why I came back in.
Then I greatly appreciate it, and the family
No, that's right.
appreciates it too. We're gonna go to the Patriots. We're gonna talk to our family today. We're gonna talk to Sargis. We do a lot of good stuff. But here's something for you. I've been watching this. I know you're watching CNN more often because Scott Jennings is just absolutely amazing. I'm a Scott Jennings fan. I'm becoming more of a fan of his every day.
Mm.
Well, just recently they were talking about, as you know, Donald Trump has said he's going to grant asylum to white South Africans.
Yeah, that was that's an excellent idea because they're being destroyed. If the farmers down there, and they're gonna give them farmland too to work up here.
Right,
which is great.
They're stealing the farmland from white farmers and giving them to whatever at this point, because the leadership there is basically a spiteful pro new apartheid leadership. They're pro genocide, and the mainstream media here has been covering it up. The world mainstream media has been covering it up, and the globalists have been covering it up because they don't want to talk about what's really happening. No one talks about Christian genocides. Nobody talks about the white South African genocide.
It was okay with Mandela too, right? Mandela got freed and all that stuff and everything else, and how much the United States backed him and all that stuff. And look what happened now.
Hey, it depends. It all depends on who the leaders are.
Yep. So
I mean, that Zuma guy was pretty bad too. Let's get into this because the CNN panel was discussing this very idea that Trump's letting in the white South Africans, and that's not the same thing as a genocide. But the Biden administration allowed people just walk in and say asylum for absolutely no reason. Maybe an argument with somebody's neighbor or something like that. BS. That's not what asylum is all about. And they got their free trips in here. Let's watch what happens when some moron from, I guess her name's Ashley Allison from the obviously from the Biden-Harris Biden-Harris campaign from 2020. Let's check this out.
And part of that is that the people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaners actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans. And so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also. And so that is what they are saying is discrimination.
They're trying to justify this. This is what happens. Look, the Afrikaans, I understand the colonization thing and everything else. Yeah, but the fact is they won. They're the conquerors. They won. You can when you talk about South America or Mexico at this point, they don't talk about that. Let's hear more.
Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks and balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to. So if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave that country.
They're leaving to come here.
No,
these refugees are coming.
Wait. So they can leave the country, but they can't leave. Is that what she's saying, George?
Yeah.
What a moron.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
What are you, an idiot?
Against them coming here?
Holland. Holland.
That's better. See, now she got it. It's not Germany. The Afrikaners came from the Netherlands. She had to be corrected. But that she initially went to Germany, and you know why, right?
Yep. Because a lot of times some of the Nazis went down there to establish themselves down there to get away from all that stuff. And the Germans also. So, and that's what they based upon. But what happened to the situation about being an African American, like Elon Musk is, and that was a big thing before, how the Democrats were complaining about how African Americans have the rights and everything else. So, this one here doesn't make any sense. But they because of the way she speaks, they think she might be educated. But I guaranteed, what's his name is going to tell them a good story right now on the response, because I can see the expression on his face is going to be good.
Now, I get this, and the other problem is these Afrikaners, the South African white farmers. This is multi-generational now. At this point, they're native South Africans.
They've been there for years. They've been there for years.
Generations.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the white leadership that finally got rid of apartheid. But the reason why she went to Germany initially is to is, again, it's about left wing optics. The idea is you want to scare the viewer into thinking, oh, the Afrikaners today are just like the Nazis of the old days. That's why she was using Germany. Yeah,
that's what they want to bring up. They want to use that Nazi word like it's not like no tomorrow. They do it here also, the same thing, and they have no idea what the word actually means and what was. They're not too up to par with history, exactly how everything was formed. You know,
history refutes their actual argument. Let's go a little more here. I watched this thing, and here's some clips. The idea is these liberals are upset that Donald Trump has given refugee status to some of these South African farmers, and the
illegals. Yeah,
the reason's obvious. This is a genocide. It's been going on for a long time, and finally somebody says it. Biden was asleep or didn't really care about it.
We have a refugee program.
I am sure there's been violence against
who are
one
getting
side or the other.
There has been violence. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I want to make a point. Violence does not equul genocide.
Violence does not equal genocide. All right. So far, she's made a point. The problem is, George, that point is at the top of her head.
Yep.
We need to be really, really clear about that, because if you look
if you're
at
the dead guy, you may not say that.
No, I would say that, actually.
Oh, you would say that. You'd be dead, you idiot. By the way, have you ever heard the song "Kill the Boar"?
I'm telling you, you can't. It's like we got to use that expression. You can't make this shit up. It's unbelievable how they just get these ideas into their head. I think everything's written from them from either from the New World Order or somebody to give them all the the outlines of what to say when they do these news programs, because so they could keep they want to bring that racist issue no matter what,
right?
And everything they do, everything. So
yeah. But it's in the song that they sing all the time. It's in the chants. It's all over. It is "Kill the Boar." It was Ibubu Ibunuri. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Not that it matters at this point. I think you know where I'm going here. But a bungo mabambo or whatever you want to call it. But the fact is, it's "Kill the Boar." It means kill the white farmer. It's right there. It's in a well sung. It's in their folk music. So let's not say there's no genocide. Let's not say there's an extreme emergency where these white farmers need to be taken into this country under asylum, or even in Western Europe. I don't think they want to go to Western Europe because hell, it's too infiltrated with illegals and they're not doing anything about it. Hey, and you want to know why we should defund PBS, George? Take a look at this. PBS, a report from a while back. Persecution of South Africa's whites, a false narrative, president says, as Musk repeats genocide claim. In other words, he's saying, well, if the South African president who's committing this and who's endorsing all of this says there's no, that this whole thing's a false narrative, well, then all good, because we're PBS and we're non-biased.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why the funding's got to stop. That piece of garbage news organization, because they just like anything they could do. I don't know where they're getting. I don't know. Besides where they're getting the information, I don't know who's listening to these people. Right. I know a lot of leftists are, but the whole thing is that how much of an audience do they have? Do the people really believe what's happening here? I mean, the market came back, the gas prices are down, food prices are down, and they're still saying that, they're still talking on the news of fake news media about the prices are going through the roof, and now about the prescriptions, and the only thing that got affected in the market was the pharmaceutical stocks.
Yeah, and that's true. And then, of course, that's going to be very interesting to watch very soon. Let's go to our family here, the Patriots. MK Hart says racism alive and well on CNN. Nice job. And that's absolutely true. That's what we just saw. Denise, of course, I think racism is all that keeps the Dem Party alive. And yes, that's true. CNN, Communist News Network. We used to call it the Clinton News Network back when I was doing some morning show radio, that sort of thing. But I think we all used to call it that. Sadly, yes, George loves Christ says she agrees with you. Sadly, yes, they do, Denise. That's absolutely true. Let's see. Let's see. We'll do a little bit more here. And I do want. Oh, here it is. President Trump needs to defund NPR and PBS now. American Mark, you're 100% right. That it's true.
Yeah, well, they're not. Congress is not doing anything about it. They're still sitting down with their knees together.
That's true. And George, I want to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Sargis Sangari, Lieutenant Colonel retired Sargis Sangari. He's been on the show several times. You're always on television. I love watching you on International Roundtable too, Sargis. I want to shout out to my friend Blanquita Cullum, who's the executive producer of that show on NTD. If you want to see a great show that's really, really nicely balanced, by the way, check it out. International Roundtable on NTD. Sargis, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, guys.
Well, time for Wake Up Patriots. And I want to talk to you. There's a lot of things happening. There are two major wars. Well, one is a ceasefire going down, but again, we're talking about decades of tension. So how long is that going to last? There's been talk about us slowly descending into some kind of World War III, and I believe there are three fronts that this could occur on. So we're going to start there, and let's go right here with the Middle East. Let's start right there, Sargis. Israel gave an ultimatum to Hamas to release the hostages by May 15th. That day is coming. What do you say?
Yeah, that day is coming. But as you know, that Hamas has released the American captive. Of course, that's with pressure, of course, on Qatar. Everybody on this planet knows that Qatar and Turkey were the main sponsors of the Muslim Brotherhood and the main feeders of the dollars that go to these type of organizations. Qatar has given billions of dollars to terror operations, to include the Iranian proxies that have operated within the region. I think that the trip that you see with President Trump taking now into the Middle East, for the first time, he's really kind of squeezing Israel too in this process by that token squeezing Netanyahu, because it's the first time that he's not going to go visit him prior to returning. And the deals that are being struck are now being struck with Qatar, are being struck with Saudi Arabia. There's a possibility that even the Syrian leader currently, who is nothing more than a handpicked Muslim Brotherhood guy who used to be a Al-Qaeda guy, and he's killed Americans in the past, has offered the possibility of a mineral deals to President Trump, and it's possible that he may actually meet that Syrian leader in Saudi Arabia. I think what Trump is doing for now is for the next 4 years that he's in command, he's trying to squeeze all these characters to bring them to the table to have peace in the region. However, with that said, with the possibility that once he leaves, if it falls apart, that America's not going to be blamed, that they're all going to just absolutely wipe each other out, to include Turkey kind of, falling on his face as expanding to become that next caliphate in the region. So I think what he's trying to do is utilize the leverages, put everybody under kind of pressure, to include the Israelis, to say you're going to have to come to the negotiating tables, give them an opportunity to strike these type of economic and military deals. But I don't think the region will ever be able to be secured until he breaks the major deal, which would be with the Iran. If you can strike a deal with Iran and it can be ratified as a treaty by Congress, I think that you'll see a long-term peace in the region. And whether or not the Israelis will be happy with it or not, that might be a different issue. It depends on what happens after Netanyahu has left office and whoever comes in after him. Whoever comes in after him will have to understand that the U.S. policy in the region has to be supported and followed. I think this is kind of leverage pressure to squeeze both Israel and also all the individuals within the region, to include Turkey, Iran, and others, to come to heel to U.S. policy.
Yeah, Israel will have no choice in the matter.
They have to go along. Yes, they're going to need to go along. And believe me, we're going to try to make a deal. And I'm sure the Trump administration will try to make a deal as favorable to Israel as possible. But what are the chances? And keep in mind, Iran is not to be trusted. And I'm going to go back to this. Go back to this. I'm going back to this. I do this a lot on this program. But John Quincy Adams warned us a long time ago that that Islamists, or is what we'll call Islamo-fascists today, they'll say and do anything to advance their cause, which includes lying about making peace, making deals, and
says that in the Quran.
Right.
It says that right in the Quran, right there.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it was Quincy Adams' warning to America and future presidents. And a lot of this was never heeded by the likes of Barack Obama or Joe Biden. And I'm hoping Donald Trump keeps that in, because I know Donald Trump is like, yeah, we made a deal. It's going to be great. Look, I like Donald Trump. He's a net positive president. everybody makes their mistakes, but you can't make the mistake of trusting Iran. I'm pretty sure he's going to have eyes on the country. What are you thinking?
Look, I'm an Assyrian Christian. My folks been butchered for 2,000 years
That's another thing.
in their region. So, and we just went through another genocide in 2014. And then, of course, the most recent attacks that took place under the current Syrian leader in Syria against the Christians and the Alawis. And then the same guy now is going to strike a deal with the president of the United States. Even the Qataris, okay, they were the ones who actually were more responsible for the hostages being kept by Hamas. And now you have to have the only hostage that was finally released have to possibly go and pay tribute to the people who were partially responsible, because the Trump administration wants to make sure there's a positive spin to it. And anyone in the Trump administration who's anti-Iran and thinks that a military force capability should be launched against them, whether it be Rubio, who's you don't even hear him anymore talking on TV networks, and also Waltz, who's now going to be occupying a UN position, which really means nothing when it comes to major cabinet positions. These individuals have been put to the side. I think the mistake that Netanyahu made was when he was interviewed about the strike that took place that killed the leader of Hezbollah. He stated that when he was informed by his people that should we contact the Americans, he was told don't contact them until basically their aircrafts are in the air. That was pretty much of an insult to the American position, meaning that we as Israelis are kind of going at it by ourselves in the region, even though it happened under Biden. I think Trump understands and remembers that, and a lot of people don't like the Israelis to try to go on by themselves. The Israelis have no trust really kind of in American administrations, because for them it's survival, and I don't think that the American administrations will strike any deals in the long term for them. But the problem that the Israelis have, they've been since the day they declared independence, been at war constantly. And this method is not working anymore in the current global settings. So I think what Trump is doing, even though I don't like the fact that we negotiate with terrorists, I don't like the fact that we work with them. I know for a fact that when I was downrange, we had a young American soldier who was killed on Christmas Eve when I was in Iraq, my first tour, and we were looking for his killer and the network for 2 days. And when we started getting close to finding him to kill them, by that afternoon, he had reached out to the Americans, struck a deal with him. And I actually sit at a luncheon and had to eat from the same plate, communal plate with this terrorist. I don't like the fact that a person who killed an American now is my friend, but if my country said you have to make peace with him, I had no choice in the matter. And even the Syrian leader, who has been responsible for killing Americans, is now possibly coming to the table to strike a deal with Trump. My only issue here is, as I said, once Trump leaves, because of the Trump factor, these nations are coming to the table. It's going to fall apart regardless who the next president is. At least I think what he's trying to do during my time, there's going to be peace. After I leave, once it falls apart, at least America can pivot and say, hey, look, we're not responsible for this. The first time prior to Trump going down the range to meet in Saudi Arabia, I was asked to take my team from the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement to sit down and meet with the State Department. We chose a date, actually, that was the date of the 100-year contract expiration of the Sykes-Picot contract, which was a contract between the French and the British to divide the Middle East. And when we sat there and we told them that today is the 100-day anniversary of the expiration of that treaty, the guy who was sitting there from the State Department actually looked at his hand thing, he's looking at his watch, he didn't even have a watch on, because we got into his mindset to say that you don't know anything about the region. So we knew at that time that advice we were going to be giving to the State Department was partially going to be used possibly by the Trump administration in order to be able to strike a new precedence in the region. You have, of course, the Abraham Accord, which is an economic accord. It's going to expand into a military accord. But the reality was, we had told the State Department then that today the United States is going to be blamed for everything that happens in the Middle East, just like the British were blamed for everything that happened over 100 years. So either you're going to have to follow these type of realities and understand that the only way you can get out of it is to be able to have a functional peace in the region, but be in a position of power, or have an ally on the ground that you can trust. Unfortunately, U.S. never was able to develop that ally. Even, as a PKK just this past Monday announced that they're going to disarm, and this is the Kurdish groups that were fighting against Turkey in order to be able to maybe have a larger peace in the region. And the new technologies with the drone capabilities that are out there, and Turkey really having a lead when it comes to drone capabilities, which they also use their drones to support the Azerbaijan government as they were destroying Armenian army before they took Karabakh. The reality is that all these have manifested in the possibility that with Trump being in the lead, that everyone wants to come and negotiate for the dollars more than anything else. Will this fall apart on his face after he leaves? 100% it will. Will he be able to set it up in a way that it will not be blamed on the United States? That's the fine line that he has to walk, and the only way he could do it is by striking a deal with Iran long term, which would be to an extent detrimental to what Israel needs to achieve in the region.
I think we're forgetting another important issue is what Islam is doing into America with all these communities that they're opening up.
Yeah.
And it's a big point, especially what they were doing in Texas and stuff like that. We gotta get a handle on that. Maybe possibility, because all of them are coming here, maybe they'll stay where they're coming from because of the peace that'll happen. I have no idea, but it's getting really bad down, I think, in America. I mean, thank God we have 100 million gun owners, but, we still got to, still have to worry about what they, like Chris said, in the Quran, they can lie everything they want because they're allowed, because you're an infinite. As long as you're not of the Islam faith, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah. They think it's justified. It's almost like a holy obligation to lie to the rest of us to spread the will of Islam. And this is the monkey wrench in the whole thing. And going to the Patriots here, going to our family here, D Horgan 24, and I want to pose this to both you, Sargis, and you, George. What are your thoughts? Qatar, as you know, offered an Air Force One as a gift to President Trump. Look, I understand that they could use a new one. It's a bigger jet. All totally understandable. But you mentioned, Sargis, Qatar has been involved in almost every situation with the U.S. in the Middle East since Operation Desert Storm. We can go that far, and probably even way before that. But we were based in Qatar. We have a base there. Then Qatar's been the whole thing with Hamas and the hostages. It's a big deal. But here's something interesting. Then, while promoting terrorist organizations, he says, including Iran. So he says if he was an advisor to the president, he'd say, don't accept it. What about you, George? And what about you, Sargis? Would you accept it or would you not? And why?
George, I'll let you go first. Buddy.
Well, I think he should leave it up to talk to his people about accepting the gift. But I think I don't know. I don't think it's like a peace offering. I think they're trying to look like it's a buyout deal that they want to make up to the United States or something like that, which I think it's wrong. I mean, he could take the plane and sell it. Take the plane and sell it and make money on it. I mean, he said he wants to use it for the Defense Department and stuff like that. I don't know. I think it's going to set off a lot of people about accepting that gift because of how much they're involved with all these terrorist organizations. And I think the only way Israel is going to be at peace is if they destroy Hamas. And that's my opinion. So.
Israel, the only way they're going to be at peace has to be stronger than all their enemies. And, that means that you have to actually start building your own weapon stockpiles, whether it be aircrafts or anything else, and then selling them in the region through military sales. I personally would not have taken that. And for me is because here's a terror organization. We have multi-bases there, but I was laughing, but because multi-bases were no use to us. If the multi-base is there for me to have leverage over my enemies, then that's one thing. But if I have a multi-base in your country and all you're doing is funneling money to the terrorists that I got to fight against and they kill Americans, to me is useless. However, with that said, I think the optics look bad, although legally he can receive the aircraft. The optics look bad when not only you're receiving aircraft, at the same time, you have your lead counsel, envoy in the region receiving money from the Qatari government. And even as I had stated this before, Pam Bondi, who has started the task force, 10-7, looking into where the money and the support is coming to these networks that are operating, in our school systems here. Pam Bondi herself was a lobbyist for that government. Now, hopefully that's, ancient history. And now that she's in a position that she is in, that she's going to go ahead and counter and go after the same people she was lobbying for, who are funneling money into these schools, and even these terror networks that might be operating in the U.S. that might one day become operationalized. But at the same time, some of the money that comes in gets struck in support of your son-in-law, who's really being bailed out from a real estate deal that he's made. On the optics, it looks bad. Okay, if you replace the name Trump with Biden, most of the folks that are in the Trump side of the house would be like, this is crazy. However, when you look at it from a national strategic strategy of what I said that he's trying to do in 4 years, he is willing to make these deals to include with the terrorists in Syria, who has killed and will kill Christians in the region in the future, and who has killed Americans in the past. And now you're looking at maybe striking the similar mineral deal with him and Syria, as he's offered it, and possibly maybe meeting with him and in Saudi Arabia during this meeting, and then marginalizing the state of Israel to try to get them to heal to what your final long-term plan is. All this is contingent on nothing crazy happening suddenly, a October surprise, I would call it, when you have the new system that the Chinese have developed that counters a SWIFT financial system that is going to go online October 1st, and all the European nations have already said we're going to log into it. So you don't even have now any leverage when it comes to sanctioning any of these people if they go against you. I truly believe if you do not strike a deal with Iran and have it ratified here in the United States over the next 4 years, you're going to end up as Trump leaving the entire region in peace, and the entire region will implode, to include your NATO ally, in this case Turkey, falling on his face because Erdogan is scheduled to depart in 2028 unless he changes the constitution and somehow keeps himself in with early elections.
I think he'll try.
And possibly by early elections at the end of this year, maybe sometime in November, he set the stage to at least have his prime minister take that lead. But when you have the Islamic ideals in the foreign policy engulfed into the foreign policy of Turkey, that becomes a issue that you have to deal with. And we had written an article a long time ago as far as on the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, who speaks for Islam and who should speak for Islam. And in this case, we identified there where the Pope somewhat speaks to the global Christianity, even though he doesn't represent everyone of all the denominations of Christianity. When he speaks at the UN, people listen. When he speaks against communism, people listen. Even in that endeavor, though, the Middle East doesn't have that type of a person. So you have Turkey, Egypt, Saudi, Iran, all jockeying to be the lead for Islam. And in that case, they keep on fighting each other constantly in order to establish a final Islamic caliphate in the region. Who is that going to be at the long term? Who knows?
Well, do you believe China and the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE and all that are joining forces to cause all this turmoil here in the United States?
Yeah, China is the lead of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which was an organization set up to counter NATO. When we were looking at some of the attacks that were taking place by the Taliban against various different interests while we were on the ground
in Afghanistan,
yeah, we saw that the Japanese companies were being attacked. As we started, peeling back the onion, we realized that it was Chinese money going in to the Taliban to attack the Japanese companies in order to force them to leave, so that China could come in and pick up the mineral rights. To
Yep,
go
that's what they did. Yep, I
organization.
believe that was a deal between China and Biden to walk out of it, to withdraw troops out of that
That was,
Afghanistan.
yeah, that was actually a continuation of an article that I had written in 2016. I had been briefing the Japanese as to what the reality might be about our ISIS cell operating inside of their country. And then I did meet with the Ministry of Interior there, and I told them, look, China's about to now try to go become more of a tech army than a billion-man army. My recommendation to the Abe administration at that time was to see whether or not the Japanese companies can support that transformation for China becoming more tech savvy, capable military. And I said, then, just have Abe, without announcing it, flying into meet with Xi and tell him, here's our offer, we'll help you become more tech savvy. If he says yes, then you got him, because all the backbone is going to be Japanese backbone structure for their tech. You could shut off their missiles or aircrafts in a heartbeat if they decide to launch against you. And if he says no, now you know what the true intentions for what they're trying to do. At least now you'll have a decade to prepare for where we are today. Now, look, China in itself, the elite of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, introduced a plan under the Obama administration. And I have an article on the Near East Center for Strategic Engagement, which I published in November or October of 2016. That was Wang Yi's vision for how China and the U.S. need to divide the globe, basically. And when Wang Yi proposed that, really his wants and desires were basically China's going to take all of Asia. The Middle East is going to be an area where the nations that need the oil and other resources to use it, in this case, it would be, of course, China, Japan, Korea, and other nations, while Africa would be a place where we would compete. United States would have to retreat internally and handle domestic issues, and possibly work with South America in its backyard to try to align that hemisphere for the interests of the U.S. Now, there would be competition in that plan, and that competition would be between either the EU or Russia winning, or becoming the strongest coming out of Europe. Now, look where we are today with the chess pieces. After Obama, after Trump, after Biden, we have a war between Russia and Ukraine, which was really trying to settle that plan. Why? Because at that time, Susan Rice went to George Washington University, and we thought she was going to counter the plan that Wang Yi had proposed. She talked about how can we actualize this? She used those words. That means how can we align with it? So if you look at really how the whole plan was laid out, going back from Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump now, it's still kind of aligning along the plan that the Chinese have proposed. The only difference is Trump is leveraging, using hopefully India to kind of counter what China would like to do. But again, like I said, if China still has an ability to take Taiwan, if China has an ability to, with the BRICS being aligned with them, and Russia really being in the China hemisphere as being part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and not on the U.S. side, then you're going to be in a lot of hurt come midterm elections, where you may not be able to live through this process to where China actually is an equal partner, rather being in the lead as it is now. So how are we going to get the result? It depends on what Trump strikes.
Right. They want to be dominant here. And I want to take the underlying point here as well, because we're talking about the national security issues when it comes to China, Shanghai Corporation or Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS and everything else like that, and what's going on now. But also underneath that surface, BRICS, as we've talked about here several times in this program, is trading amongst themselves now, trying to avoid using the dollar, because thanks to recent heavy government spending and a lot of other things, the dollar is extremely weak. Well, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is also doing the same thing. They're working on trade deals within each other, trying to circumvent or not use the dollar. And a lot of these, I believe there are 6 near de-dollarization organizations that are working together. So yes, on the surface, we're talking about wars and trying to avert those sort of things and trying to avert attacks and trying to avert nuclear capabilities from Iran. But underneath, you have the Chinese working, trying to influence a lot of these Middle Eastern nations, African nations as well, and South American nations to circumvent the buck and to trade with them rather than with the U.S. So a lot of things are happening on the surface and beneath the surface when it comes to all this.
Well, then the trading will be all done in gold. I mean, that's what Trump proposed to them. He put that right in their face, number one. And number two, like as the Lieutenant Colonel said, that, you know, with Obama, he had the Muslim Brotherhood in there. He had Valerie Jarrett in there. They were all planning on to do what they planned to do. And that's why you wrote all those articles at that time, 2016.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and look, there's still some of those folks still in the system.
Oh yeah, they are leftovers. Yeah,
yeah, no, like you haven't purged everybody. I mean, when you still have a person in the Department of Defense who has ties to the Iranian government, that's not a good thing for us. But it is what it is. You know, I mean, that's up to the administration to get these guys out or use them for their benefit. But I always say that this sword cuts both ways, right?
Yep.
Look. Right now the U.S. dollar is not being traded as much as it needs to be traded globally, and China knows if we force it, and basically the tax man cometh, as we would say for us at our level, the payout on the interest is coming in this year. What was initially the U.S. Debt. Trump has to make that up this year. He has to make sure it's made up. Now, even with the Doge cuts,
agree. Yep.
If you take all the Doge cuts that have taken place and you apply it towards just the interest, it's not even going to be able to cover any of the interest. Even if you go at 10% tariffs across the board on every nation on this planet, you're not going to be able to cut into that until you get the U.S. dollar to be utilized more than any other currency out there. And right now, China is trying to limit the movement of the U.S. dollar to force it to be where it is currently, really the fifth, reserve currency. Technically, if you look at the books, to where it would be even lower than that, to where the only ability that Trump has. I mean, I even said this in articles when Trump was in office the first time, maybe the devaluation of that dollar. That's the only other choice he has. Otherwise, you have to control the gold, right? And this gold control and a cryptocurrency tied to that gold is important. But when you have the BRICS controlling at least 50+% or 51% of the world gold reserves, you're in trouble. And by the way, remember when we were supposed to do an audit on Fort Knox? And nothing has come out as far as what they found out.
I didn't see anything.
I mean, that's not good.
No.
That means that is most likely some of the stuff you're hearing is that maybe Obama sold some of that gold because he wanted to push that healthcare plan. Congress wasn't going to support him financially. So he said, okay, I'll just sell it and I'll have the money available to at least get it across the finish line. Whether or not that's true or not, we'll find out. But the fact that you have heard nothing coming out of how much gold is there in Fort Knox is an issue for us. So you have to get your hands on that gold, right? So how you can control that gold if it's sitting in the BRICS nation and is possibly when the Europeans come online in October of the following year is going to be, the 75% of the global GDP. Now, if that 75% of global GDP is fighting against you, President Trump, and you got some lonely schmuck, politically appointed judge sitting somewhere who doesn't understand any of this garbage, but from his perspective, but he's like, we have to put limitations on what the administration can do. Guess what? Your executive orders are executive orders. The next guy who comes in after you can wipe them all out with a simple signature. And the fact that your Congress takes again months just to get to a point where you can pass a bill to align with your foreign policy, it's it's just the system for us is not set up for long-term success, for what maybe Trump has envisioned. I was telling a friend of mine, I said, if I run for office and I win in November, by January, the opposition party has already selected who's going to run against me.
Already. They have it all set.
They get it in Jersey already.
They have it all set. So for me then to try to go ahead, and before I even turn on my computer, I have to go to the farm with my political party at the time. If my political party doesn't control the House or the Senate, I'm going to be limited to where I could sit when it comes to committees. Let's say my political party has won the presidency, the Senate, and the House. I can say, hey, I want to be on this committee, and the leaders of that political party can say, yeah, you know what, you're not going to sit in those committees. Go sit here. And if I don't agree to that, I'll never be able to pass a simple bill while I'm in Congress. So
yeah, there's a deal. They make money on that too. Yeah.
Wasn't it Matt Gaetz who was talking about this as well?
Yeah.
And he was saying it's about money. You say, well, how much do you get on this seat? Yeah, and he just puts, I'll put this amount down. There's, you're there. You're going to get to talk. You're going to get to say whatever you want, and that's it. So a lot of this has to do with money as well, and that's
it's a lobbyist. The lobbyists, everyone's on the take. It doesn't matter. And if they don't write out a check anymore, they give their family members a no-show job, or they give money in certain areas for their family members and stuff like that. That's how they're paying. Well, K Street's right across the street, right?
Yeah, I mean, our fiscal calendar doesn't match up with our congressional calendar either. Anyway,
yep,
right. So I'm finally in a position to take my seat in an office after 20th of January. Well, the budget was passed in October of last year, and the only opportunity I have is to get on a committee, get a bill passed through a committee before the March supplemental that comes out for me to fight for any dollars. And if I miss that timeline, the only thing I could do is maybe have a bill in my hand, and I could walk around and say, look, I was able to pass this bill, but that bill has no dollars behind it. So I have to wait until after the August recess to hopefully be able to get some money allocated towards a bill that really doesn't have any legs to stand on. And then in September, I'm collecting signatures to get on the ballot in November of that year to be able to run in a primary against somebody that probably the other party has chosen to run against me in Illinois, to be able to win the election in general elections in the following November. The system's broken. This thing doesn't work. It's dysfunctional. Not take a U.S. foreign policy by Trump that has in his head and try to dump it on this system. It just doesn't work. That's why I think the region is going to be in trouble.
Matt says they fight for those committees. I'm good friends with Matt, but Matt says they fight for these committees. They actually, because they get extra money for those committees. Plus they get an extra expense. Yeah, they get an extra expense account for those committees.
There's also TV time and exposure, because these guys want to be these guys either want to be senators, they want to move up a little further, governors, or even possibly a president or somewhere in the cabinet. But they don't go anywhere if they're not visible. Okay, I get it. You can get a cabinet position if you're mild-mannered like Doug Burgum, but Burgum actually made himself visible during the presidential campaign. He knew he wasn't going to win, but he said a few very poignant things in this little chance he had, and he became somebody on the on future president's radar at that point. That's the important thing. That's what these people want. They want to get on the radar. How do you think Elise Stefanik almost became the UN ambassador, and she could very well become the governor of New York because she's visible? And by the way, Red Ginger Sargis says you're absolutely right on the EO's executive orders. We need Congress to pass the budget so Johnson can stop being afraid to upset anyone. Johnson is like the Cotter of Congress, isn't he? Because they're afraid to upset anyone. Got to play both sides so they can. He could be the mild-mannered Clark Kent.
They don't even go after the judges. They don't even go after the judges.
Boasberg has to be impeached at this point.
Yeah, they don't even go after the judges. Look what happened with Tillis. That's why they didn't want Eddie Martin to be the district attorney for Washington D.C. because he knows all the garbage that's going on in there. I mean, Janine Pirro will do a good job. But
we have a few minutes.
This old stuff. I'm sorry.
We have a few minutes left, gentlemen. I want to ask you both this question. There's a recent ceasefire in the quick war so far between India and Pakistan. What a lot of people don't realize is India and Pakistan have been at odds for decades. I remember talking about this when I was in elementary school in the late 70s.
Kashmir.
Yeah,
cashmere, and it wasn't the sweater.
right. But the fact is, they're at that time both nations were very close. This is the 70s, very close to nuclear capabilities. Now they're strong, and you have two forces again: Pakistan, which could always call a holy war, and India, which has such a heavy population they could say, "Well, bomb us. We have too many people anyway." That's dangerous if you think about it. How hot is this spot at this point? Is the ceasefire going to last, Sargis and George? And what do you think might happen in the next week or month as see if things either cool down or heat up?
George, you got the lead, buddy.
I think that'll calm down. I believe because they're not going to benefit each other. It's all about with them too, with the money and the trade and stuff too. Also, they do a lot of trades between each other, between India and Pakistan, and plus we have to worry about India because they control a lot of our medication too. Besides,
No, they control a lot of it. Look, I did a show on this. I think on the National Security Hour. I think it was a week ago or Friday.
I think it was last Friday.
It was last Friday. That's what happens when all your dates are mushed together. You barely, can figure it out. But look, and it was kind of looking at the historical fact. Thanks to the British, they really did a wonderful job of screwing up the Middle East and creating the fight between India and Pakistan to include just 400 kilometers of a river tributary to make sure that they could harness the downward drive of the wind in order to be able to put the two nations at odds in the future for their own benefit. So that's how the borders are drawn. And of course, a guy comes out of Cambridge who just picks Pakistan and pulls it out of the blue and names a nation. But look, the fight here was really kind of the East and the West. I would say that if you are a country that owns old French Mirages, you might want to, renegotiate because a lot of them were knocked down by those Chinese missiles that were being used by the Pakistan government. And everyone in the Pakistan parliament, it was when I was briefing I had given a white paper to the shadow minister of Australia in 2017, I believe. At that time I had a list of all the parliamentary members in Pakistan who were on the payroll and how much they were getting paid by China. But now I would have recommended let it kind of expand a little bit in the fight because now you're really pressuring China to come to the table to negotiate. Why? Because both of these nations are part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
That's right. Yeah.
This would have dumped a load in the lap of the Chinese leader Xi while he's being squeezed with tariffs, have internal issues in the country to now have to be able to manage like we would have to manage NATO members fighting each other, manage these two nations fighting each other. And I think it would have really collapsed them more. So when he came to the negotiation table in the future, he would be forced to settle for better odds and terms that Trump was offering in the long-term trade-wise. I think he used it somewhat for leverage, but I would have let that happen to where you could have broken them. Keep in mind, the PLA blockading at the 100-year anniversary Taiwan itself, and Xi has made the determination that we have to break U.S. monetary capability of the dollar by 2028, and then at the same time by 2030 take Taiwan, which would mean that U.S. is done when it comes to any type of leverage.
Agenda 2030 all around. They're just working on it. That's the goal year for the globalists. They're going to still try to pull this one off. So don't believe for a minute they haven't quit.
No. I tell that to everybody. They all joined forces. New World Order, establishment, and all the the deep state. They all became partners.
I'll do the list again. They disqualified Marine Le Pen in France. They threw Gurgescu in jail in Romania. Borsellino's already in, I don't get that name, Bolsonaro. He's already in jail in Brazil. So he can't run again. They tried to do the same thing to Trump. The German liberals are trying to ban the AfD party because They want to put a hold on immigration. This is the whole thing. And if you're against the globalists, they'll do anything. They'll come after you. But Sargis, I want to thank you for being with us today.
Appreciate it. Great meeting you.
Yep. And by the way,
meeting you. It's an honor. It's an honor to meet you.
No, much appreciated.
Catch Sargis Sangari on Fridays on the National Security Hour on the America Out Loud Talk Radio Network. Check it out. You also catch me on that on Wednesdays. I do the Wednesday edition of Unleashed. So I do some betting practice over there as well.
You know what gets me the best? That the Chinese have the Uyghurs there, right? And they're Islamic faith, but the Muslims still, all the Muslim countries want to deal with the China the way they do. So it's like they really don't give a shit about their own people, if you put it that way. Even their own people in their country. I mean, especially Iran. Look at the pictures of the past. You know that, Lieutenant. They're just unbelievable. How they used to live before with the Shah of Iran when was he there, right? They had the beaches, they had the best beaches and everything else. And I think the people will eventually rebel, I think, in Iran. My personal opinion.
Well, money talks, and the whole globalist agenda. Look, we lost Vietnam because of the globalists.
Yeah, it was all
the Chinese to win in the region. Go look at some of the rules of engagement that I had given our troops. There's no.
Well, he was going to sign. He was giving up, right?
Yeah.
North Vietnam was giving up, and they just walked away, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you have rules of engagement that says you cannot strike any SAM sites until they're fully built and operational, that the globalists are involved, but they've been involved since then. So
a lot of people don't understand. It's amazing how people they don't know about with the history and all that stuff and everything else. But I appreciate all your information, and I'll hook up on a Friday on your show. I got very interesting points you have there.
Anytime. I hope it helps.
Yep.
No, it does.
Yep. The India-Pakistan show you did is on podcast as well, so you can listen to that.
Oh yeah, check it out
on demand.
Yes. I got to remember what shows I'm doing. I keep on forgetting.
I remember. It's all there. So there we go. I want to thank you again, Sargis, and
that's cool.
Jen, thank you very much, George, for being with us today.
Yeah,
George,
last
minute.
Out the door. I was at the door.
All right, thank you, Tony.
I was on a mission already. All right, take care. God bless.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patriots, and we'll see you tomorrow.
God bless. Bye.